Project Manager of the Climate Change Adaptation with UNDP, joined me in the studio. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for the invitation.
So tell us, what is Goal 13 of the Sustainable Development Goals, and what is the status of Papua New Guinea in relation to that goal?
Right, as you know, on 25th of September in 2015, the world leaders basically they adopted a set of goals to end poverty and bring prosperity to all, and the goals are known as Sustainable Development Goals, and today we are talking about goal number 13, which is about climate action. As we know and we heard, the whole global community is basically affected by climate change. Specifically talking about Papua New Guinea, we are very vulnerable to the impacts of climate change. Because as you know, 80% of the Papua New Guineans they live in rural areas and they are dependent on agriculture for their sustenance, and the crops they grow is basically vulnerable to climate change, the change of rain patterns and all stuff. Similarly, one of the issues in Papua New Guinea, I understand, is basically also access to drinking water. People do depend on rainwater harvesting. And if there is any, because of any reason, if there is a shortage of, rain, then basically the situation in the villages actually gets bad. Then again, the other things that we heard from the coastal communities is basically they are being impacted by the sea level rise because of, the sea, eroding their lands. The sea salt water basically affecting the drinking water sources for the communities living in the coastal regions. At the same time, I think people have also lost gardens because of the sea water intrusion. Similarly, because of global, because of the climate change, the sea level, besides sea level rise, the temperature of sea has also increased, and they say that the acidification of the sea has also increased, which basically result in coral bleaching. The corals are the source of fishery for the coastal population, and when there is coral bleaching, what happens is that the fishing stock is not available. So in a way, there are so many different impacts of climate change on the lives and livelihood of Papua New Guineans here in PNG.
And you've mentioned a whole list of implications of climate change. What are some of the initiatives done currently by UNDP or UN agencies to combat?
Right. As you know, basically UN and UNDP, we work with the government, and here in Papua New Guinea, we have a very close collaboration with the Climate Change Development Authority. That's the nodal agency for climate change in Papua New Guinea. So we work at different levels. For example, like with CCD at the national level, we have provided strategic support to develop policies with related to climate change and strategies. At the same time, at the provincial level, we also work with the provincial government. Climate change is a very new issue for the provincial governments, and there are no institutional mechanisms to deal with the issues of climate change. That's why we have actually set up provincial climate change committees, which comprises of different stakeholders.
That's in each province?
Basically the project that we are implementing with CCD is being implemented in 5 provinces. So I'm talking about these 5 provinces. But CCD is trying to establish these systems in all the provinces.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's an avenue where different stakeholders who are from the government, from the from the CBO, NGOs, they meet and discuss about the climate change impacts and what kind of strategies the province needs to put in place. But I think it's important for me to tell you about some of our initiatives at the community level, which is very important, because the communities are the ones who basically get affected by climate change, right? So one of the programs that we implement with CCDA, but in partnership with NGOs as well, is basically mangrove conservation and generation. So, as we speak, we have a project in Madang as well as New Island, where we train the communities about the importance of mangrove conservation and how it's going to help protect the coastlines. And I'm happy to say that we have actually raised almost like 50,000 seedlings,
Wow.
which is going to be planted in 20-kilometer shoreline of Madang and New Island province. So that's one of the initiatives. But at the same time, I think the other thing that we do is basically we sit down with the community, and of course through NGO partners, and try to understand the issues they are facing because of climate change. There is a method called participatory rural appraisal, where you spend time with the community, you try to figure out how the climate have changed over the years, how the community is being impacted by it, and then based on the analysis you develop some kind of adaptation plan for the communities, and then you implement it.
Okay, because it changes per community, right? Yeah.
So basically through this project we have we have actually assisted the communities with drinking water sources like water storage. Communities have been trained in resilient agriculture. One of the issues that we also noticed at the community level is that people don't store food properly. Here, they depend on fresh harvest.
Yeah.
But I mean, for during emergencies, it's important that you have to have some food which is stored and can be used at the stress period. So basically, training people in food processing and food storage, but again, also preparing them to deal with emergencies at the local level. For example, if there's a flooding happening at the community level, people need to evacuate.
Yeah.
They need to take care of the elderly, pregnant, and kids. And in case there are any health emergency, they need to deal with that. So through the planning process, people identify the evacuation routes, how they would manage the evacuation in case there is a flood. Then basically they are also trained in first aid. So in case there are any community level disease outbreaks which are easy to manage at the community level, so they apply their first aid skills. So there are quite a lot of programs, initiatives. But as I said, we work at different levels, from the national level to the community level. Thank you.
Well, Ravi, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and thank you for informing us on what Goal 13 is. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you so much.